Hey, everybody, welcome back to another edition of Bold Predictions here at Inside Nebraska. It's been a while since we've done one of these fellas. Join me, as always, for these is Steve Mark and Tim Vergeese. I'm Zack Carpenter. Um, Guys, no time for chit chat. Let's just get right into it. Nebraska travels to USC, 5-4 overall versus USC, 4-5 overall. 1 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. Central on Fox on Saturday. Um, it's two programs that are in disarray right now and disjointed, and it's two extremely disappointing seasons. Well, USC is extremely disappointing. Nebraska's whatever adjective you want to use, that's like a quarter step below extremely disappointing, I guess, at this point in the season. Guys, I was listening to your Nebraska football show, recent episode that came out on Wednesday. If you guys haven't, anyone out there who hasn't given that show a watch or listen, I encourage you guys to do that on our YouTube channel. You guys were talking about a lot of different stuff because a lot of different stuff has happened of late, even though Nebraska was in a bye and is coming off of a bye week, obviously. Dana Holgerson taking over as OC and play caller was the striking breaking news of the week. And Steve, on that episode with Tim, you said, or Tim said, there are a lot of unknowns, quote unquote, a lot of unknowns for both Nebraska and USC. So it's made this game in particular hard to predict for both teams, but Nebraska's in the middle of a season where it's been incredibly hard to predict what we're going to see from them week to week. But Steve, for Nebraska, what's the unknown thing that has your brain scrambling, or maybe you're excited to see the most this game? But I mean, the answer is pretty obvious, right?
Shocker. It's what the offense looks like. This is crazy. This is wild. This is unprecedented. It's whatever you want to call it. I have no idea what to expect at USC with Nebraska. Bringing in Dana Holgerson. A lot of Danas these days.
Like
Dana Holgerson.
Nebraska's going to bring the fight to USC
Yeah,
with, led
that'd be
by Dana
crazy.
White. There we go.
What if Rule said that he was giving the play calling duties to Dana White and then just like walked off?
I think there'd be a group. I think there'd be a group of Nebraska fans being like, "Well, maybe it could work.
Yeah,
Bring a fresh
yeah. Bring it
perspective
in.
out, a real
Bring him in.
outside
Yeah,
perspective."
super fresh perspective. Yeah. So Dana Holgerson, obviously, you look up, you do some research on him. Look, the guy has scored points wherever he's been. He's been a play caller nearly his whole career. He's a very well respected offensive mind. But in this situation where he was brought in January, he watched Nash Hutmacher wrestle a Wyoming dude in January. It looked like he was going to get hired then, but then he wasn't, and now he's back in our lives again. And we're left just trying to figure out what the heck is going to happen right now. And so I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what it's going to look like. I think that Dana Holgerson calling plays. There's a short list of guys who you could call and have him come in and 2 weeks be calling plays in a game. There's a short list of names of guys who I'd be comfortable doing that with, and Dana Holgerson is on that list. There's not a lot of coaches I think that would be up for this, but I think Dana Holgerson definitely is. So obviously it's the offense and how that's going to look. Dylan Raiola, obviously too, he's dealing with back contusions and spasming and all that stuff. So what is he going to look like if he's even out there? We'll learn more about that from Matt Rule on Thursday. But yeah, I'm just excited to see what this offense looks like in this crazy situation that Nebraska finds itself in.
Yeah, and Tim, I have two questions for you. The first one's piggybacking off of that. If you have any additional thoughts to what Steve said, I mean, you have background with Dana from being from the Houston area and seeing that program a little more up close, seeing the offense, X's and O's schemes, whatever you want to touch on here. But any, I guess, just general thoughts or anything specifically that you're looking for in this first game with Dana as the OC.
Yeah, I don't know how much different to expect schematically, and me and Steve kind of touched on this is just like, the air raid playbook is not super large. They don't rely on a whole lot. It's kind of just running a few things really, really well. How much time they've had for that, who knows? But there's a lot of elements of the current playbook you can take and piece together and sequence it better. So mainly, I'm looking for little things. I'm looking for how drives progress. I'm looking for better time management. I'm looking for like changes in tempo, changes in looks, just little things that make the offense a little more efficient. So I'm looking for more efficiency, I guess. I again for Dylan Raiola, I think getting back up into like throwing above 65, completing over 65% of his passes. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see the run game get going a little more. So little things, and I don't think this offense from a personnel standpoint is super, super far off. I just think again hasn't been sequenced right consistently, hasn't been play called well consistently, and so maybe some changes. Dylan Raiola with a week off and some a refreshed head, I guess, and a fresh body, I think could be good for Nebraska overall.
Yeah, and I feel like Rule's been alluding to that. I mean, in the weeks leading up to the change, and then on Monday when he announced the change and talked about it, where after the UCLA game, he had the quote that stuck out to me where he's assessing Dylan's play and um, the struggles leading up to the interception, then the bounce back after that. After that pick six against UCLA, he was just diagnosing overall over during that game in the past three. And he said, well, it comes back to that old phrase, like you see a lot, you see a little, you see a little, you see a lot, which was alluding to the fact that I think they were putting too much on his plate and giving a freshman quarterback for as talented as he is, as in command and composed as he is still a lot on the plate of a quarterback in his first to then it was first 9 games of his career. So I think they wanted to get back to, I mean, clearly they wanted to get back to simplifying things, not putting as much pressure on him. And then Rule talked about like what you were just touching on there, Tim, of um, we need to weed out what we don't do well. Don't try to focus on too many different areas. We're too scatter shot as far as the offensive designs and offensive play calling, I guess. And we want to just focus in on what do our guys do well, who does that well, and go from there. So what you're saying is exactly what I think the goal is, and a Holgerson offense would be a good marriage as far as trying to get this team to more effectively and consistently move the ball.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I completely agree, and that's where like I think a lot of this works is keeping some of that stuff simple, for Dylan, like and more than anything too, hey, get the ball out on time, like don't hold on to the ball too much, like a staple I think for area coaching from the quarterback perspective, just making sure the ball's out fast, making sure the ball's out efficiently. It's like hey, drop back and go. You're not standing there, you're not hitching on the ball too much. You're not progressing through reads. Too long, it's bang, 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 go. And I think that'll be beneficial for Dylan. And, whatever happens after this in terms of, building out that playbook for him and building an offense around him. But for the rest of the year, you have a weapon at quarterback, you have weapons at receiver, just use them. And again, like I said, keep it simple.
Yeah, keep it simple, run the ball, which is leads into my point. We're gonna switch it up here. I'm gonna give my bold prediction first as we get into this game a little more specifically. Nebraska USC again Saturday at 3 p.m. Guys, I'm going back to my midseason bold prediction we had during the first bye week. I said that Nebraska would get a running back to run for 100 yards in a game this season. First Nebraska running back to go for 100 yards since Anthony Grant did so against Louisiana Tech last season. I actually got that initial stat wrong on our midseason bowl predictions. I said Anthony Grant against Minnesota when he ran for 115 yards on 22 carries. I had that on November 5th, 2022. I had that as the last Nebraska running back to get 100 yards. I was wrong. He did against Anthony Grant, same guy, did it against Louisiana Tech last season. 135 yards against the Bulldogs, which is pretty fascinating, I guess. It's pretty surprising that they've only had in the 21 games under Rule and Marcus Satterfield calling the offense, they've only had one 100-yard rusher from the running back spot. Chubba Purdy and Heinrich Harburg each went over 100 in one game apiece. But for the fact that Rule, when he came here and all during his first season and going into the second season, really, but when he got here and then throughout that first season, he said that they wanted to be a body blows team, run the ball, tough, physical, and to only have one 100-yard back in 21 games is pretty insane. That's only one 100-yard back in the last 25 games since that Anthony Grant against Minnesota performance. But that's what I had going into the second half of the season. And I said it was going to come against USC because USC's run defense has been toward the bottom of the Big Ten. So that's what I have on Saturday against USC. I think when you hear the air raid, which is something that people have been talking about, you hear the air raid that Holgerson's going to bring. People start thinking, oh, okay, for better or worse, we're going to be passing it up. We're going to be lighting it up through the air and running this high tempo, up tempo pace and throwing it all over the yard. But I don't know if that's necessarily the case. And Steve, you out of the three of us, you probably have the best handle on Holgerson's X's and O's from scheme, concept, play design point. Just because you've been studying a lot more this week. You asked Rule about what are the differences in the philosophies and the style, the run game between Holgerson and Satterfield. So you tell me, is a 100-yard running back on Saturday, is that a good prediction, bad prediction, shaky? Yeah. What do we think?
I think it's a good prediction because I do think that Holgerson is going to want to establish a run game as he always does going into games. That's we have an epidemic in society when people say the word air raid. Everybody just thinks, okay, Mike Leach, that means everybody's going to be throwing it 60 times a game. That is not what's going to happen. Every single time I turn on Twitter and I look at an account and it's talking about an air raid, I'm like, oh my God, why is Matt Rule bringing in an air raid guy? He's going to we're in Nebraska. Don't throw it 60. He's not going to throw it 60 times a game. That is not every Mike Leach disciple has put their own spin on air raid principles and kept the principles of the air raid, which is the mesh concept, which is Y crosses, stick routes. Those are like the core things to an air raid offense. And a lot of Mike Leach's disciples who have gone on to call plays at their own programs across the country, they still use those core concepts, but they run the football too, because not everybody is like Mike Leach. Mike Leach was on his own stratosphere, like over there. Like he was just like doing his own thing and it worked for him and it's all great. But everybody else, all the assistants who have gotten jobs themselves, have taken lessons from the late Mike Leach, and they have put their own spin on it. So, and Dana Holgerson is exactly that same thing. He's put his own spin on it, and he's had, I think it was like 9 seasons where he was the head guy at his program. He's had over 229 or 230 yards rushing. He's averaged that for a season. So he has shown, if he has the horses to do it, to run the ball and stick to it and be a run dominant offense. Now that remains to be seen with Nebraska because they have struggled so far this season to consistently run the ball with the handoff run game with I don't want to say immobile, but just a quarterback like Dylan Raiola, who his legs are not his strength. His strength is his passing ability. So, yeah, I mean, I like that prediction, Zach, a lot because I do think that Dana is going to come in here and want to establish a run game, and that's part of like putting less pressure on your quarterback's shoulders because, as you guys were talking about earlier, Dylan Raiola had way too much pressure on his shoulders. He was giving maybe too much options out there to do what he wants, and so giving him less on his plate, just and having him in a system where he can make one read and then make a decision. I think that's going to benefit him too. And then as he gets older, as he grows, as he gets more experience, you're going to be able to put more on his plate. But yeah, I like that prediction, Zach, for sure.
Yeah, I think it goes back to use another cliche phrase: think long, think wrong. You get a wide open 3-point attempt and no one's running out at you, and you wait an entire full second, you shoot it, you back rim it because you're thinking too much instead of just letting it fly. Mm-hmm. You have an opposing defender running at you, you just catch it, shoot it, release it, boom, splash, like you make it because you're not thinking too much. I think we saw a little bit of that against UCLA where we're seeing receivers come open up the seam like Thomas Fidone on the pick 6 where Dylan went to Jamal Banks, I believe, on the in breaking route. If memory serves correctly, feels like 8 years ago that game happened. But saw receivers coming open. It's like what Dylan's not letting it fly like he was earlier in the season through the first 4, 5, 5.5 games really. up until that second half against Rutgers is when we've seen the struggles um, really start to come to the forefront for him. But yeah, I think simplifying it for now and then installing more things, hopefully maybe in the offseason, is where we see the Holgerson offense really start to take shape. If Holgerson does indeed, if this goes well, and if he does indeed become the offensive coordinator for next season. But holy hell, that's a different conversation for a different pod, different day. As we sit here right now, Tim, I'm gonna come to you for your first bold prediction. We're gonna jump around, go to you, then back to Steve, and then we'll bring it around in a not full circle, but jumping around like the Nebraska offense has been scattered up till now. So, Tim, what do we got on Saturday for your first or for your bold prediction against USC?
Yeah, a lot of talk about offense, but my bold predictions on the defensive side of the ball. On USC side, we talked about changes there. New starting quarterback, Jaden Maeva, came in from UNLV over the offseason in the transfer portal, been sitting back up to Miller Moss, and he's taking over as a starter, kind of gives them a little more on the ground as a true dual threat. A big guy, 6'4", 220, like a big dude back there. USC's done a good job for the most part this year of keeping their quarterback clean, and I think Nebraska's not gonna again they've had games where they're relentless after the quarterback. I don't think this is going to be one of those games, but I do think they'll be able to get pressure. On the back end though, I was going back and looking at Jaden from last year and watching a little bit and checking a little bit. In a third of his games, he threw multiple interceptions. So basically, when he throws them, he throws a couple. And he had 10 interceptions total last year, 4 games in which he threw at least 2. And he started in 12 games. And so this year, making his first start, he's got an arsenal of weapons, and I'm actually interested to see how Nebraska matches up. You're expecting Tommy Hill to be even healthier than he was with the bye week. Sierra Wright, maybe a bit of a revenge game for him. That's I think a storyline not enough people are talking about with this game. So those two guys, the back end of the secondary, how they match up with this USC front or USC pass catcher group. We'll have
You'll
to
get there.
see. Yes, but I do believe ultimately that this unit's able to come down with at least 2 interceptions. On Saturday. I think Tony White's got enough up front to keep him confused. I think in the back end, I trust specifically Tommy Hill and Sierra Wright in man coverage. And I think if those guys get tested, I think they come down with at least 1 interception. So
That's
yeah, put me down for the Nebraska bringing down 2, but those guys specifically, I could see 1 apiece.
That's hilarious because there's been so much other stuff going on that when you said, yeah, Sierra Wright going back to USC, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. I thought about that plenty of times. Like when I saw USC on the schedule, like I haven't thought about that at all this week or last week until you just said it. So yeah, maybe he gets a homecoming interception. You think LeBron's going to be on the sideline, Steve? Is that your bold prediction? Or you going elsewhere?
I mean, if he shows up on the sidelines, in a game that Nebraska is playing in, I think that'd be pretty cool. Maybe you could chop it up with Sierra about their acting duet that they did over there. But yeah, for my bold prediction, I'm sticking with the offense, and I'm going with Ja'Cory Barney Jr. I think Ja'Cory is a player that Dan Holgerson is going to look at and like, obviously, for obvious reasons. And there's a lot of similarities to, like that the 2017 and 2018 West Virginia Dana Holgerson teams, because like on the outside, he had David Sills and is 6'4", 215, 220 pounds. And when I look at Nebraska's roster, it's like you have 2 6'4", 220-pound receivers in Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nair. And Dana Holgerson was able to get the best out of David Sills. Maybe there's something that he could do with Banks and Nair or two. So that's something to watch. But I'm also going Ja'Cory Barney heavy here. I think Ja'Cory Barney Jr. is going to, have a lot of opportunities to get his hands on the ball in Dan Holgerson's first game calling plays for Nebraska, because he wants to show support, show Ja'Cory Barney Jr. that he likes him, that he trusts him, that like, hey, stick around next year and you're going to get the ball just like you are today. And so I think, when you look at Ja'Cory Barney Jr., I think he'll have a big game. I'm talking like 150 all-purpose type yards. And that would be a new career high for him in the all-purpose yardage. I think it was like 106 yards is his current best right now in that category. And he did that against Purdue. So I think he has over 150 all-purpose yards against USC. Now, since he's not returning kickoffs anymore, so that's going to hurt him. But as a receiver, I think, that's obvious. But as a rusher, too, I think he's going to get some handoffs potentially in the backfield. And it's not like this is any new stuff for Ja'Cory Barney. Marcus Satterfield was also trying to be creative with Ja'Cory and getting him the ball in different ways. And we've seen that throughout the season. But I think it's going to continue at USC, but maybe in some slightly different ways with some new wrinkles, perhaps some air raid principle wrinkles. So my bold prediction, Ja'Cory Barney Jr., at least 150 all-purpose yards. So let's go with that.
Steve, are you by chance hinting at a Ja'Cory Barney pass? Reverse pass? Can you please put me down for one of those?
I don't think we will, but I'm thinking he's just going to catch some passes and take some handoffs. A lot of them.
That was my bold prediction. I think for the Rutgers game, it was Barney throwing completing a pass and then completing a pass to Alex Bullock. And I think I said go for a touchdown I really thought we were going to get it for one game this season. Hey, there's still 3 left, maybe 4. Maybe
Save it
4.
for Iowa.
Save it for Iowa. Save it for Wisconsin, which would you be 0 times? I think 7-game losing streak to Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's a lot. They haven't done that yet.
Yeah. But hey, still chance that could happen. And that became a popular discussion point around the Nebraska beat. Like, all right, maybe I'm not so far off. And then we were just all off on that one. But we're gonna transition now. Final score predictions, fellas. Go into the updated lines here. Final score predictions for Saturday's spread is USC minus 8.5. Over under is 50.5. Nebraska has got some numbies here for you guys if you care about the spread. Nebraska is 5-3-1 against the spread this year. USC is 5-4. It's the 3rd time Nebraska will be an underdog. They're 1-1 against Indiana and Ohio State. So 3rd time, another road game where they're the underdog. The over has hit 3 times, just 3 times in Nebraska games this season. The under has hit 6 times. And this ties for the 2nd highest point total in a Nebraska game this year, 50.5 as well against Northern Iowa, 55 for the Colorado game, which went severely under. I think both games went severely under. Nebraska's point total on Saturday is 20.5. USC's point total is 30.5. So they're expecting the folks at BetMGM are expecting like a 30-20, 31-21 type game somewhere in there. So what do we got? Steve, you can go first.
Yeah, so for my my score prediction, and I know USC is dealing with their own stuff too with the quarterback situation, but like with Nebraska's situation with the Holgerson coming in, only being here for 2 weeks, and now he's all of a sudden calling plays, and with Dylan Raiola going through his injury situation that he's going through, could Heinrich Haarberg see some action? I just see that there's a lot of like needing to see something before I predict a win here. So I'm going with USC getting a 28-24 win over Nebraska. I think it's going to be a tight game. I think Nebraska's defense keeps them in it, but I think the offense just comes up short because what else can you say? There's just a whole lot of stuff going on right now, and I don't know if it's going to click in one game, but it could against Wisconsin or Iowa. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm not far off either. I'm at 27-24 USC. I just, again, like for the same reason Steve says, it's hard to predict right now what we're going to see from the offense. But like I very much, as I'm sitting here, was like, man, what if it's 31-20 Nebraska? Like I could see that, I could see a world where Nebraska goes in new scheme. We've seen the last 2 times Dana Holgerson played Lincoln Riley. He put up 33 points and then he put up, I think, 58 points. In back-to-back years, kind of playing them when he was at West Virginia as a head coach. So he knows how to put up points on Lincoln Riley. Obviously, it's a new defense. It's not Alex Grinch there anymore. So new defense, all of that, I understand. But I could see a world where, kind of Dana knows which buttons to push. The game gets a lot simpler for Dylan, and he just feels fast and loose. And it's something I was thinking about when we were just sitting here. I think this offense probably resembles a lot more of what he did at Buford, where they spread it out, where they spread the receivers out. We're pushing the ball downfield, and getting guys, talented receivers in space. Nebraska has those guys. So I could, again, like I'm saying, I could see a world where Nebraska comes out on top, but I just, it's too unpredictable right now. I'm gonna give USC the edge going into this.
I've got Nebraska 27, USC 21. Run it, fellas. Talking to you too. Do you guys know what your record is? I was just looking it up while you were talking there, Tim. Your guys' records in Nebraska games this year?
I have no
What is it?
clue.
8-1, Steve. Same record as me. Tim, you're a lousy 7-2. What are you doing? What are you doing? We all three got the UCLA game wrong. Just like everybody. Yeah. And then Tim had Indiana. Had Nebraska beating Indiana by 31-27. So
Woof.
Time-
Woof. That was
time-
bad.
time for someone to take the lead here. Might be me, might be Steve going ahead. I mean, you guys are both against me, so we'll see what Jansen has. I have a feeling he's gonna have USC as well. He's gonna be out there. He's actually from that area, so LA Coliseum. LA Coliseum is gonna be fun to go to. Last time I saw LA Coliseum was on the Jalen Hurts Olympics commercial with him throwing the football that's on fire with the flames coming out. Have you guys seen that one?
No.
Jalen Hurts, they
Sounds awesome, huh?
They flew Jalen Hurts out. I don't know if they actually flew him, but flew him out from Philadelphia to do it instead of having a LA Rams player or Matthew Stafford throwing it in his own stadium. Anyway. Oh wait, no, they don't even play at the LA Coliseum. What am I talking about?
The
They play
Rams?
They play at
SoFi.
SoFi. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you could have had Caleb Williams. You could have had Justin Herbert. You could have had, like, there's options. And if you're talking about throwing it far, like, Justin Herbert is right there. Like, Jalen Hurts is not the throw it far guy. That's just like,
Yeah.
that was weird.
He's strong, but he's not he doesn't have the arm strength.
His weightlifter strong.
Yeah. I mean, what 600-pound squat that they show every single time that the Eagles play in prime time or talk about it every time, but
he's a bodybuilder.
You're not going to have Miller Moss on those commercials. I'll tell you that. Not anytime in the near future, I guess. Maybe you have Jaden Maeva coming down the pike at some point. But any last thoughts from you guys? Tim, I was gonna prompt you with a long-term, bigger picture question earlier in the show, but skip past it. Any final thoughts? Steve, you did say earlier, you touched on something earlier in the podcast. I mean, if I ran for president, my number one platform would be driver's ed reform, especially on interstates and learning how to pass, learning how to go at consistent speed, especially on the interstate from Omaha back to Lincoln. But it sounds like yours would be teaching about the air raid offense. Is that?
Well, yeah. I mean, like, it's, I don't know. You just open up social media and you see so many tweets dealing like about the air raid and how, fans are not wanting to see the air raid come to Lincoln. Well, like, it's Mike Leach's air raid is not coming to Lincoln. Dana Holgerson's air raid might be coming to Lincoln. If he's here in 2025 next season, I think that's something that is exciting, should be exciting for fans and exciting for players too, and especially exciting for Dylan Raiola, because I'm sure a lot of programs are trying to back channel and see what he's thinking for next season. But if Dana Holgerson sticks with Nebraska, I like that. And I think a lot of receivers in the transfer portal would like that too. Some offensive linemen as well. So I don't know. I think very highly of the air raid. I think it's a smart way to go about things. And Tim, one thing I wanted to ask you was like those splits that Dana Holgerson has sometimes used, those ultra wide splits where the receivers are out there by the numbers and even beyond the numbers, and it creates so much space in the middle of the field for like a run game. Do you think that is kind of like a little new twist or a wrinkle that we could see? Because I don't think we've seen that, at the past few seasons at Nebraska with Marcus Satterfield calling the plays. Do you think that we could see like the receiver splits just like Art Briles, Baylor-ish, like way out there?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to. I wonder if
I'm hoping to. Yes, is what I'm trying to say. I'm hoping to,
because again, and in you think about the offensive struggles right now and some of the issues. It's beating press and it's creating separation upfield. It's an easy way to just get your guys in space and it's
like
an
stacking
easy
the receivers too. If you can't get off the line, if you can't get off a Big Ten corner, stack them and create some separation that way. I mean, there are just little things that, like, when I was watching West Virginia and a little bit of Houston from Daniel Holgerson, is just like the little things that he does like that, where, you know, it helps out the run game. If you're having your receivers have those splits way out by the numbers, there's so much room in the middle of the field, and that actually can help the run game too, as well as the pass game. And so, you know, Tim, like we said, stacking your receivers on line of scrimmage, have one guy on the line and have a teammate of his right behind him, and therefore, you know, you help out a guy who has trouble getting off the line of scrimmage by just creating that little bit of an area for him to move. So it's just like little things like that, which I hope we see on Saturday, which I don't think would be like too difficult to install and like try to, you know, teach the players to do, right?
For sure. It shouldn't be. You know, it's a lot of, again, similar concepts run out of different formations. And ultimately, it's just teaching guys where to line up. And I don't think that, like, specifically that is not that hard to install with some familiar concepts they've already run. Or even if you're just running four verts off of it, we've seen that work pretty consistently. You can just push the ball downfield. You have the weapons to do it. But like you're saying, yeah, what it would do for the run game too. Like, again, it's not hard to teach linemen how to block differently for that, or receivers, any of that. And honestly, more than anything, you have an issue with perimeter blocking. This takes them out of the equation. You have three DBs covering two guys on one side and two to three on the other side. Lighten up the box. It just opens up holes for a Jonte Dowdale or Amir Johnson or an Emmett Johnson. You're right. I would like to see something like that. But yeah, more than anything, I'm really interested to see what the offense looks like on Saturday and how many different tweaks we see, whether that's just, again, schematically, or if it's just, oh, hey, they're sustaining drives now. Like,
Steve, you think they'll run counter, or you think it's going to be just a reverse pivot?
I really hope that they run
Tim,
counter.
I was joking with Steve after the UCLA game. They ran one play. Like, anytime I see a reverse pivot, I just immediately think, oh, counter. Steve's laughing at me. I'm like, I know it's not counter, or maybe it is. I don't know. That's my initial thought. It's like, no, just look at the pulling guard. It's like, yeah. But I never.
I don't think you have time, unfortunately, to install counter. But I'd like to see counter become like a mainstay in the run game. Like, I'd like to see Nebraska do more,
because it's big in a lot of air raid offenses. I mean, look at Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma with what he was doing. I mean, he was using counter really, really effectively as well. But I don't think it's a big part of Nebraska's run game right now.
It hasn't been, and again, that's
I don't remember seeing it.
It's tough to install that in 2 weeks. Like, it's I think Nebraska does it a couple of times on certain formations, but it's primarily like when you're blocking wide, not the traditional counter blocking. But that's tougher to install, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe we'll still see some reverse pivot handoffs to Dante Dowdell and Emmett Johnson and whoever else on Saturday. Or Ja'Cory Barney. Hell of a way to bring it full circle to your BP, Steve.
Yeah,
I think that's going to do it for us. Unless you guys have any last thoughts. Tim, we got a big recruiting weekend. Probably not. They're on the road.
No, on the road.
All right, that's going to do it for us. Again, encourage you guys to like this video, subscribe to the Inside Nebraska YouTube channel, get all these videos dropped directly into your feed, including the recruiting blitz with Tim, Nebraska football show with Steve and Tim, and then all the press conference videos and plenty more. On our YouTube channel. Encourage you guys to go to InsideNebraska.com. We'll have plenty of coverage from the game on Saturday, and Matt Rule talking on Thursday. Maybe get an updated status report on Dylan Raiola, unless we don't get it until Saturday with the availability report. But that remains to be seen. So for Steve Marek and Tim Verghese, I'm Zack Carpenter. We'll catch you guys again next time.